Councillor Scott? And Councillor Bowman supports. Any questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. F, Corporate Service Department Report Number Finance and Business Services 2014-01, Emergency Medical Services EMS Lease Agreement. It is recommended that Finance and Business Service Report titled be received. Deputy Mayor Malash. And supported by Councillor Bowman. Any questions? This agreement, I might add, was okayed by the County Council at our last meeting, so they were satisfied with it. So. All in favor? Motion carries. G, Infrastructure and Development Report Number 2014-16, Modification of Lease Agreement with Harry and Joe Grun, and then I will ask Chris to make a few comments on this, please.
Through your worship, I just wanted to add or make one amendment to the agreement. The agreement in place right now that's before you has the contract extended to December 31st, 2020. I'd like to, upon request of the individual the Gronans that we're going into the lease with, he's requested that it be made December 31st, 2021. Because of his crop schedule, it would allow him not to waste the fertilizer that he would be using to plant his corn in 2020. So they typically fertilize with the corn, and then the following year he'd plant beans, and he'd be able to use the fertilizer that he'd placed in 2020. So he's asking that agreement be pushed to 2021.
Councillor Baker?
Sure. Can you identify the location? I'm having a hard time pulling it out of the report.
Through your worship, based on the maps and diagrams in there, the location is at the existing Harrow sewage lagoons. It's, okay.
Now we would need an amendment to the 2020 to 2021 date, and then we can approve this report. Chris?
If council would like, I can provide just a little bit of background if you want me to take you through the report.
Okay.
Through your worship, what's happened is we had an agreement with the gentleman to farm the areas. They're considered Part C and Part D, which are the far west areas, just immediately east of the top lagoon and then south of the middle lagoon, those two farmed areas. We then went into a lease agreement for the solar farm, which is on the triangular piece. I guess I can point to this piece here, Part C. You can't really see it well, but that's Part C right there. As a result, we had to get those crops off there in order to install the solar farm that we had an agreement with. So that's the financial impact of this report, is to pay damages for that. At that time, the Gronans requested that the lease be extended for the other portion, and we cleaned up the agreement to have better wording as far as in the event this happens again where we have to get out, there's timelines and stipulations set up as far as what will happen if either of us has to break the lease. So.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Baker?
So move the recommendation with the revisions of the date.
Supported by Councillor Bowman. Any questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. H, Infrastructure and Development Report Number 2014-17, Bulk Water Filling Stations. Looking for a motion received. Councillor Bowman? Supported by Councillor Baker. Any questions? Councillor Baker.
Yeah, I think it'd behoove us to kind of go through the report just a little bit to give us an identify what other municipalities have or have not these stations.
Sure. Through your worship, A few months back, council had requested that administration go through and investigate bulk filling stations, water filling stations in the rest of the municipality or rest of the county, and investigate some of the expense around installation and operation. So we took a look at other municipalities in the area, polled them, asked them what they had, where they have them, and any issues they have with them. So as you can see throughout the report, we deal with, Amherstburg has two. They're self-sustaining, yes, about $1,000 a year that they pay, but they were put in probably before, in the 1970s they were installed. So there's ongoing backflow and maintenance and meter costs there. Kingsville have none. They had one prior to amalgamation that's since decommissioned. They realized that they weren't revenue neutral, so they weren't making them any money. And with that and the ongoing maintenance costs, they decided to decommission theirs. Lakeshore has two. For the most part, they're self-sustaining. Again, they were installed pre-amalgamation. No major concerns, and they require occasional monitoring and obviously the yearly testing and maintenance. Leamington has none as well. They had one prior to amalgamation. Again, decommissioned by council direction about 5 years ago. They had liabilities with concern as far as potential contamination, cross connections, and they had issues with vandalism and theft. I know in the last meeting, which I was not in attendance, but the information was passed to me as far as there was an issue with the use of the bulk fill station for emergency preparedness. I comment in here more than likely if there was a system failure or an issue with the water, then that station would be contaminated or not in use either. That it would render that station virtually unusable. If there was an emergency where there was water required and the system could produce it, we could utilize hydrants with backflow prevention in those cases as needed. Right now, there's no requirements for us to provide bulk water stations. I've attached the map that shows where they're at within the municipality. We did take a look at different types of bulk fill stations. Like anything, they range, from very minimal capabilities to very expensive, the Cadillac version types. The one we looked at that we feel would fit the need of this municipality as far as security, as far as function, as far as moving forward for this system, with all the checks and balances, was attached and identified, and with the costs associated. Something for council to consider moving forward, if this is something that they want to pursue, is definitely location and finances, I think. Location, is this something that if you're going to provide for your municipality, do you want one in each center? Do you want one, centrally located? Those are things to look at. As far as land as well, you'd have to look at land to put these things on. They don't take up a lot of land, but they would take up definitely some space. And cost. I mean, the costs are identified. We go through some initial capital costs as far as providing the water service, as far as doing site restorations, fencing, appropriate lighting, appropriate security. We'd have to get into operationally, grass cutting, those types of things. Winter control, are we going to leave it open all year round? The key, I think, with respect to finances is where the money comes from for it. So, whether we spend $10,000 on it or $50,000 on it, does it come from the existing water users who've put their money into life cycle for upgrade and maintenance of their system, and this is something outside of their system that's really not needed by them? Or does it come from the general tax levy and have the general taxpayer pay for something, a service that this council sees as a benefit to the entire municipality? So those are some issues that I've struggled with in looking at this, and that's something that you guys would have to tackle if you went to pursue this further. So.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Bondi.
Thank you. Thank you for your time in this report there, Chris and Andy. I think that although this isn't a new issue, this has been an ongoing issue. We've talked about this a few times. I just think that I don't think it's right for our council to make a decision right now on a capital project heading into an election where we don't know, it's almost like, are we going to do it in one ward, are we going to do it in 4? So I'm not comfortable making a decision right now. What I am comfortable doing is putting it in the budget, just putting the line item in the budget with the dollar amount, and we can have discussions. The new council can have discussions, at the appropriate time, because it is a capital cost. And my mandate would be not to have any more capital projects for the next little bit till we have a handle on ours. And Chris, the point that you made that really stood out in my head was, do we want the current water users paying for this service that will only be used by some? And my answer to that, my short answer to that would be, no, I don't want to pay for it because I don't want to use it. But yet I understand the value for some residents in the service. So I would just like to move receipt of it later, and we can discuss it if the new council feels appropriate.
Okay, is that a motion to receive? Supported by Councillor Baker. Questions? Councillor Baker.
Yeah, I agree with that statement completely in terms of let's move it forward. The report's been done. It's a good report. What is shocking to me is the amount of money that would be required as a capital to put this in. For what? This is just one location. It could be up to $50,000 based on what I'm seeing in the numbers. So I would move it forward to next year, but I'm not so convinced that this is something this community really needs. So, but thanks for the report.
Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries. I is Corporate Services Department Report number 2014-23, Future Feed-in Tariff FIT Projects. And a recommendation there too, and I would ask our Treasurer and Acting CAO, Donna Hunter, for her comments.
Through your worship, I just want to note that some parts of this report may be mute at this point, given that this Essex Center area is restricted in terms of new offers to connect. Basically, what spurred this report is that we're being approached by companies wanting to put solar panels on our buildings or to install ground mount solar on our properties. And in talking about this as a team, we felt it was something that if they're going to make money, we can make money. And maybe we can make more money, and so we wanted to investigate in conjunction with ELK, because they have the expertise, what we could do. We could still put in rooftop or ground mount in the Harrow area, because that's out of Kingsville, not out of this station. So I do want to go forward with this report, just in case something does come up in the Harrow area. But in terms of anything for Essex, such as the arena, the Twin Pad Arena, or the lands over at the sanitary sewer plant in Essex, that would be out of the question at this point. Thank you.
So I believe what you're saying is you would like us to receive the report, but also authorize administration to explore opportunities for submitting an application to the FIT program under our own envelope.
That's correct, but that's going to be very limited now, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There may be other opportunities in the Harrow area. We were hoping for both hands, but at this point it would just be in the Harrow area.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Baker.
Yeah, just a comment, a question actually. Under the new type of program and the new open window for the amount of megawatts that are there, is it not, I don't know if the existing feed-in tariff program still exists as it was before. Isn't it not a bid process now? Or is it with the smaller requirements, is it still under the feed-in tariff?
I'm not sure about that last part of your question, Bill, but I mean, basically it was an application process or a bid process for the FIT 3, which is what we did in conjunction with ELK. We don't know what bid for number four application process will involve, or if it'll be different, but is more or less a bid process for 3.
Deputy Mayor Meloche.
I will move the recommendation.
And supported by Councillor Bowman. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. J, Planning Department Report number 2014-44, Henrik, 696 Lakewood, Colchester South Ward 3, minor variance application fee refund request. we'll allow this gentleman to speak, if you so wish, once we receive this or deal with it. I don't know. I think we need to deal with it. Okay, Heather, would you like to give us a little heads up on this? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but maybe we'll let you, and then we
point of
can
order?
receive it, and then
Point of order first.
Councilor Baker.
Do we not need to receive this report before we hear about it? or-
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to receive it? Councilor Baker? Moves. Councilor Bonnie? Heather, do you need Heather to explain anything with regards to this? Okay. Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This started with an application for minor variance that was filed for a property at 696 Lakewood in Colchester South in, I believe it was May 20th was the Committee of Adjustment meeting at which the minor variance application was approved. At that time, the application that had been submitted by the applicant and all correspondence that led up to the application being filed, there was 8 months worth of correspondence between the applicant and myself, and it was all about an addition that was proposed to the west side of their existing home. The committee heard the application, the committee approved the application for the addition, and the decision was written exactly as it was approved, which was for an addition to the west side of the existing home. After the approval was in place, it came to our attention in the planning department just by chance that the home at 696 Lakewood had been demolished. And we were rather shocked because this was news to us. So we spoke with the building department, and it was determined that they were unable to they did get a demolition permit to tear down the home, which was not in contravention of the application that went to the Committee of Adjustment. However, the committee's decision to allow an addition would not suffice to allow the Henricks to build a brand-new home on the subject lands. They then were told by us that they required another minor variance application to be filed in order to make it clear that the variance was for a new dwelling and not just for an addition to the west side of the existing dwelling. The Committee of Adjustment heard the second application for variance at their meeting in July. That, again, was approved with no problems. And it was at that meeting that the members of the Committee of Adjustment made a motion that council be asked to refund the fees for the second minor variance application. Therefore, I have prepared this report with the information that led up to this, and my recommendation is to, because we have documentation indicating that this was for an addition, it is for that reason that my report is recommending that the request to refund the fees be refused.
Councilor Baker?
Thank you, through your worship. To administration, or just a general comment. Obviously, I sit on the Committee of Adjustments for this, and what appeared to be here is an issue of communication between two different departments of what was on the application and or about what was also understood at the beginning. I think it's communication. The proponent did come forward and do the appropriate things that were suggested after in terms of the minor variance, but if you'll read my minutes, my notes, and you have them in the report, and I thank you for that, that I did question, that, by the way, the Committee of Adjustment also in a motion approved that this move forward for a rebate, that we all agreed that should be considered by council. So because it was a communication issue, I think from what you had been provided on the application and to what was understood, I think, and we'll hear from the proponent, was that it was always under the assumption from the building that, to my understanding, that this was going to be a new build under this situation. Because when I asked the question, and this is paraphrased in here, it says, says that Councillor Baker asks, he then confirmed, that's me, confirm from Mr. Carter that the intention of the application was always to demolish the existing structure and build a two-story home on the lot. He states that he can now, that's me, I now support the refund based on the miscommunication that seemed to occur. When I asked that question during the committee, Mr. Carter suggested that he was always under the assumption that it was going to be rebuilt. At least that's what I was told at the time, and that's in notes. Maybe you can clear that up for us, because this is really just, it's an issue of communication is what it was, I think.
Heather.
Through you, Your Worship, at the time that the initial application was submitted, as I indicated a few minutes ago, I had been dealing with the applicant for 8 months, and I do have the correspondence by email in my file to indicate that I was confirming with him, and that's actually a quote, that I'm confirming that your proposal is for an addition to the west side of your home. And never once did the applicant ever say that that was not correct, and even at the public notice indicated it was an addition to the home. Never once were we told that was incorrect. And then at the meeting, the first meeting of the committee, when it was actually discussed about the proposal, and you can see that from the minutes that are on page 2 of my report from the May 20th meeting, there's no question that it was never raised with us by the applicant that he was proposing to build a new home. I understand that he did discuss that with the building department. However, in his application for Committee of Adjustment, the minor variance application, and in all his correspondence with us, that was never mentioned ever.
Okay, thanks. So I guess I'll just make the statement that I did ask the question during, and then it was at least indicated from the building official that he confirmed that he thought it was going to be a build too. So maybe at this point it's important to hear from the proponent, I think, to hear that their part of it.
Well, we'll get to him if I have Councillor Bondi right now.
I just agree with Councillor Baker. It's important that we hear from the proponent, because to me, it's either black or white. And if there was 2 applications, then there should be 2 fees. If there was 1 application and a big miscommunication, possibly 1 fee. But without hearing from the proponent, then
Okay, we need a motion to hear from the proponent. Councillor Scott, supported by Councillor Baker. Any questions of the motion? All in favor? Motion carried. Sir, front and center, give us your name. We'll give you 5 minutes.
My name's Bob Hendricks, and I'm the property owner. First of all, I was notified of this at 9:30 this morning by email, and secondly, there's probably 5 or 6 comments in here that are, one is irrelevant, one, there's too many inconsistencies. So we'll get into that at another time if we propose. Here's sort of a real quick synopsis of what happened. I'm not a contractor, and we had gone to the town and said, what do we need to do? This is what we want to do. They give us the guidelines. The biggest thing was we needed a footing inspection because we were planning on keeping the footing of the existing home. So Mr. Carter came out and inspected the footing. We did go for a building permit, and we were informed of that time that we needed a minor variance for the section that we were putting on to the west side of the house. So yes, communications might have been a problem. It might have been a gray area. So I was also issued a demolition permit. I was also issued a building permit, and 1 week later I received an email from the planning department that I was in contravene of our minor variance. My fault for not reading it in detail. I was also told on that first application that I had to come into the office, take time off work, go into the office and have it reviewed, and which it was reviewed, and didn't seem to have issues. I don't know what else to say. I was in shock at the time. I'm sort of disgusted with this this report to council that you have. That's all I have to say. no matter which way this goes, there's definitely communication problems within the town.
Any comments to the proponent? Councilor Baker.
Just for clarity, when you say, through your worship, when you say that it was reviewed by who and what was reviewed?
Use your mic.
The application was reviewed by Heather because I was wanting to sign it and have it witnessed, and I couldn't do that. I had to have Heather sign it. I could have my wife sign and have her sign. One of us could have it witnessed, but we had to come in so that this application could be reviewed and gone over in detail, which it was. What?
Baker.
If it was okay, and after Kevin inspected it.
Mr. Baker?
So I guess a question. How do we get a demolition permit then in advance or at the same time of the minor variance? It sounds to me, again, going back to this, when we were at Committee of Adjustments, understood that we thought it was going to be an addition. But it sounds, from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, that they were going to use the existing footprint, but the minor variance in their mind was to add to the new footprint, additional footprint. I don't know. And so that's why I'm saying it seems to me a total communication issue when, in fact, a demolition permit was issued. That's the communication issue. How do our departments not correlate between each other? You have a demolition permit issued and said approved, but yet we don't know this is happening. I think that's where the issue lies. It might be a little difficult for me to understand. Heather can answer that, or maybe Chris, I'm not sure who can answer that. It's about how does the how does a demolition permit get in advance of this?
Yeah, that can.
Through you, Your Worship, anyone could come in and apply for a demolition permit, and the planning department is never circulated or notified of a demolition permit. It would have had nothing to do with the application. The applicant could have changed his mind at any time. However, the decision that he had from the committee was just no longer valid for what he wanted to do, which was to build a full new home. And when Mr. Henricks was referring to me going through the application, I'm able to commission the signatures for applicants because the signature has to be commissioned. That saves them from going to a lawyer and paying for someone to commission their signature. And we always do go through the application forms and make sure that they are as complete as possible. And sure enough, we did not catch the fact that the height was not on the application form. However, the Committee of Adjustment decision and the fact that it was 2 stories, that wasn't a problem with respect to the need for the second variance. It's a different matter in terms of that Mr. Henricks was proposing a 2-story dwelling rather than an addition to a 1-story dwelling, but it wasn't something that necessitated another variance. So the height part, even though it wasn't on the application form, it wasn't a problem. That didn't present a problem for him.
So I guess, again, this just speaks to a little bit of maybe it's our system that has to work, where you say that you can issue a demolition permit from one department, but maybe we need to, I would think that department would know that there's a minor variance in place, or should be. Are they not circulated? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Do we not have cross-communication with every process has a checks and balance that the minor variance was well known to the building official because they were on site with this, but yet they still issue a demolition permit? I'm having a hard time understanding how that occurs.